Greetings,
Hello, welcome.
and today this is a little chat discussion we're going to have about a band called Ensiferum.
If you don't already know them, they're kind of a Finnish folk metal outfit. Been going since 2000, and we'll just go through a brief history and then see what we think about the albums they produced.
Absolutely.
Cool. So Ensiferum, they were born out of the remains of a band called Dark Reflections, who were kind of kicking around in about 1996. Some of the members of that band decided they were going to get together and just want to do a folk metal scene. And this is the wonderful thing about kind of Finnish and Scandinavian bands, that they were playing covers, they were playing all the usual stuff you do when you're in a heavy band, and they just decided that sometimes they wanted to do folk.
Yeah, it's amazing how many bands in kind of Finland, Sweden do that. It's kind of their bag, so to speak.
Sure. So I think that the governing force in the early Ensiferum history was this guy called Jari Minimpao, who, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, so please let me know if I have. But he joined the band after they come out of that whole Dark Reflection stage.
Now I'm going to have to stop you there. I think the key person is actually I'm going to get his name down. Marcus Trovian. He's the only sole remaining member.
The reason why I say that Jari was the driving factor was because they brought him on board, and without him and his talents, I don't think they would have made it as a folk metal outfit.
Yeah, I kind of know what you say, because Jari had kind of a solo scene going, and
Yeah, he was a very established performer in his own right.
yeah,
And I think but by bringing him on board, it gave them extra credentials. And
you could say that kind of Yari's kind of your creative element, but Marcus is kind of the Steve Harris, if you will.
yeah,
of,
the consistent guy, the musical bassist,
Yes.
not bassist,
But
bassist
bassist, yeah.
of the band that kind of carried them all the way through.
But yeah, I mean, for those who don't know, Yari went on to form Winter Sun later on, but we'll probably touch on that later.
And ultimately, a less successful career after he left Ensiferum, so that says a lot.
He's just been bogged down by some computer problems, that's all.
Yes. Anyway, but so Ensiferum, they released a couple of demos in 1999. That was their kind of big.
The much autonomous Demo 1 and Demo 2.
Yes. Well, if you're going to call them anything, you might as well call them that. It
Demo,
makes sense.
yes.
So January and November, a busy year. This brought them an eventual contract with Spine Farm Records in 2000.
Spy Farm, we like them.
Spine Farm, one of the, I think if it wasn't for Spine Farm, many bands wouldn't make it out of the traps.
No.
So there we are. Doff our cap in the way of Spine Farm Records.
Spy Farm, we salute you.
Yeah, as we do. 2001, Ensiferum was released.
Oh,
They must have thought long and hard before they came with the title to that record, which was great. In 2003, this is where Jari left, so off to do his own thing. Winter Sun eventually emerged, but it left the band were on a solid footing by then, and obviously that's when Petri came in to take over.
Yes, Petri.
Yeah. Well, it's weird because if you look at many places, I'll say he left Norther
Yes.
to join Ensiferum, but we both know that's not true because we've seen Norther relatively recently.
I mean, he was doing both at the same time for a while, and then decided to just leave Norfolk to kind of focus on Ensiferum.
Cool. When did he leave Norther?
It was 2008 or 2009, because
Cool.
we saw them in 2008,
We did
North and Ensiferum.
together.
It was in both at the same time, but
Yeah,
both
I
were still going, I think.
I didn't realise that because I'd seen them ticking over, but I didn't realise that he'd left officially. There you go, you learned something new.
There you go.
We should have done my research far better than that.
There are members of Norfolk and Winter Sun to bring that one around again.
Oh, it kind of makes sense, I suppose.
Yeah.
So you've got Ensiferum coming out in 2001. You've got Iron Out in 2004.
Yep.
Then you've got a strange decision that happens with some bands. An EP came out.
Well, I think Dragonheads was, I'm sure we'll touch on that later, but it was kind of introducing Petri and kind of getting some recording experience. Metallica did a similar thing with the Garage Inc. stuff.
But then also with the Garage Inc. was a bit of a kind of, everybody was saying they'd sold out and they were too big.
Yeah.
So this was maybe an attempt to get back in touch with that whole kind of like, look, we're still four guys that make music.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's political. But then it's quite a substantial EP, Dragonheads, as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's different, but it is very good.
Yeah, and there's quite a bit of length to it. But that broke up their recording set. Then you had Victory Songs coming out in 2007.
Good album.
And From Afar out last year. I was going to say earlier this year, but of course it's not true anymore.
No. Not a bad album. But should we go back and have a closer look at...
So yeah, if we just have a bit of a trawl through the back catalogue, pick
Yeah.
up a few themes and what we like about them. I mean, first thing, I mean, before we get into the albums, what appeals to you about Ensiferum, and why are they one of your favourite bands?
I discovered folk metal kind of through the Blessed Metal Hammer, and I quite like the kind of mix of folk and the kind of epicness of folk with the kind of heaviness of the heavy metal part of it. And no two folk metal bands are the same. What I quite liked about Ensiferum personally was how the way they do the folk is not by, say, someone like Evility will use folk instruments. Ensiferum, it's more kind of, they have folk melodies over heavy metal themes, and it's heroic.
That was the point I was going to make. That something that comes out if you listen to. I mean, like for example, you've got say Corpaclani,
Yeah.
who are very much folk instruments, upbeat folk tempos,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Whereas Ensiferum are very much the mix between a solid bass line, mainly provided by the drums. The interesting thing about Ensiferum is you don't necessarily get the bass following the drums in the same way you would in a regular heavy band.
Yeah.
So you'll find that the bass line tends to follow the melody a bit more,
Yeah.
which gives that gravitas. But their folk style is not from a variety of folk instruments. It's from vocal style, vocal content, the fact that they'll sing folk melodies and sort of stories about, folk
Yeah.
goings on, folk stories, but also a lot of top end guitar work. It's very much, musically, your traditional band.
Yeah.
Isn't it? They're not-
Absolutely. And I think that kind of stems from their kind of cover band upbringing.
Maybe so, yeah, there might be a lot in that actually.
Yeah.
That they've had to do it in a regular way.
But yeah, it's overall it just creates this really kind of, it's not quite power metal, it's not quite like black metal roots, it's not quite thrash, but it's a nice hybrid of everything really.
Yeah, and do you think that's what, we can't stand here and say they're the biggest band in the world because they're not, but do you think that's why they appeal to a wide range of people, why they're such a good festival band, for example, is because there's an element in there for everybody?
I think so. I think you can approach different areas. I mean, for example, Grindcore Rob,
Yes.
he likes Ensiferum. It's one of the few folk metal bands he likes because it's got the harsh vocals. And
I didn't realise he liked Ensiferum, but I suppose that does lend to itself because of those.
I mean, like it tolerates.
Right, so he doesn't like them at all.
No.
He went to a gig with you.
But when you think you've got people like Fintroll and Moonsire who've got kind of the growly vocals also, but he doesn't like those, but Ensiferum it kind of works
See,
with.
now that's weird because I don't mind Ensiferum, but I can't stand Fintroll.
Yes.
So that's weird. I mean, I don't know. You can quite rightly put those two in the same box. I know Fintroll have got their own thing going on, the whole troll thing, but it is strange that.
I think you like Chirasas though, and it's a whole kind of bombastic epicness to
But
the
again,
thing.
well, Chirasas and Ensiferum have got that. You'll see as you go through the albums with Ensiferum that you tend to get those songs that are just broken down into epic folk tracks. They don't try and necessarily play heavy. They just play strong, simple melodies. They'll kind of like that. Then that's when they're at their most folky, and that's a lot of Chirasas do that.
Yeah.
And they got that mix right as well. But it's interesting that people like Corpaclani never do that. They
Yes.
don't ever do that really. It's always it's folk driven metal rather than metal that's
Yeah.
nodding its head towards folk.
But I don't think. Yeah, I mean, Corporate don't have that kind of over the top epicness. They're more kind of grassroots, Finnish drinking song folk music with some heavy guitars in.
But then you get people like Stratovarius, who don't get me started on Stratovarius. It's not a good idea. But again, more power metal than folk metal, so it's going a bit broad. But again, their epic sound comes from the vocal style. They're similar to Corpaclani in that it's not entirely heavily musically driven. It's
Yeah.
not a heavy sound.
No, it's just kind of
It's more epic. It's more grandiose musical style, as in stage musical style.
Yeah.
Than it relies on the strength of the music to drive it along.
absolutely.